Morning guys, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School, and I'm out here in my gear room today, and what I thought I would do real quick, I hate shooting videos indoors. I would much rather be outside shooting videos, but it's convenient to do this in an indoor setting. I made a knife yesterday, and I'll put some pictures up of the process that I went through making this knife on this video, but I have several videos out there already on how to make knives by material reduction and forging from start to finish. And this is a Kephart design knife with curly maple handles that I made yesterday. And I kind of screwed this knife up when I made it. And I say screwed it up as in it's not unfixable screwed up. It's just not perfect. And what I mean by that is there's an area of the blade about 1 inch wide that I didn't get thin enough during the material reduction process. So when I did the final buffing, it didn't become a razor edge. Most of the blade is shaving sharp, but there's an area right here about 1 inch wide that's not shaving sharp. And so that's going to force me, because I can't go back to the buffer. I can't put this back on a jig to go back to a belt, and the buffer's not enough to remove the material. I'm forced to go to stones. And I'm a big proponent of stropping a knife, not sharpening a knife. I believe that once you initially sharpen the knife, you should be able to hone it with a strop for a very, very long time without having to resharpen or re-put the knife to a stone unless you've damaged that knife. But when I do have to sharpen a knife or go back to the sharpening process, I choose to use Japanese water stones for that. And you can buy these stands that are made to hold Japanese water stones on the internet fairly cheap. It's basically just a couple pieces of all thread with rubber stops in it that are used to hold a water stone. And you buy the water stones in different grits. You can buy them in combination grits, or you can buy them in single grits. Place them into the holder and then begin the process of sharpening. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Stay with me. Okay, I'm going to put a little light on this subject, and I'm going to come to the side here to work on this so you can kind of see what I'm doing. I am left-handed, so my hand may be in the way a little bit, and if I have to, I'll switch sides, change the camera, something like that. So I've got several different grits of stones in here, from 800 to, I think, 3,000, something like that. So what I want to do is 800 is going to be your more coarse grit. And I'm going to start off with that. And you want to soak these water stones in water for a good half an hour or 40 minutes prior to using them. Lock it into this rubber foot device or this rubber stand, and that will keep it still on the table. And then all you're going to do is you're going to come in with your knife, and you're going to tilt the knife to register the bevel. So if the knife's laying flat, you're going to tilt it up to register on that Scandi grind, and then you're going to pull the knife toward you, turn it over, and do the same thing in the other direction, pushing the knife away. So it's a repetitive process, and you can do it either by one hand or both hands, this direction or this direction. But the easiest thing that I've found is to basically get that stone straight in front of you, hold that knife, pull it towards you, held on the register on the bevel, and push it away from you. And you want to use the whole stone down the length of that blade, just like this. And every time you're just going to lay it flat, register to the bevel, and then pull it towards you. Lay it flat, register to the bevel, and push it away. Again, use the entire length of that blade and the entire length of that stone coming down, because the stone is going to get worn down over time, and it can get a swale in it. And you can get a stone, and I've got one over here, I'll show you in this video later on, that you can use to flatten these back out with and get them back to true again. I'll show you what that looks like, and you can buy that stone off the internet as well. It's easy enough to buy all of this stuff off Amazon if needs be, if you don't have a local source for it. And it's always good when you're doing this just to take your fingers and dip it in the water and put a little more water on the stone. That slurry of material helps in the sharpening process. You don't want to be using a dry stone for this. And you can do multiple passes on one side or turn it over every time. That's kind of up to you. Now I'm going to change over to a 1,000 grit stone here. And to be honest with you, this 1,000 grit stone is probably my favorite as far as a sharpening stone goes. It just feels really, really smooth in my hand. I don't know if it's the makeup of the stone or exactly what it is. You get to the point where you can register that bevel every time without necessarily having to go perfectly flat and raise up to it. You'll start to get where you can feel where that bevel's supposed to be. Every once in a while, just wipe it off and kind of look and see where you're at and what you're getting, and see if you're getting it any thinner where you wanted to get it. The spot I'm trying to catch is right here. And you can't really tell by shining a light on it that it's any different. But if you look at it head on, it does catch light right here in this 1 inch area, different than the rest of the blade. And that is how you can really tell that you've got thickness right there that you don't want. Now the other thing that you can do here to work on a specific area of the blade, and I noticed this when I was over in Japan watching knife sharpeners work in a village, or excuse me, in a fish market, is they would take the blade, register the bevel, and just drag it straight down the stone, just like this. Turn it over and do the same thing. Again, I'm really trying to get that center part of the blade right there is what I'm really after. I've got a good slurry on the stone now. So I should be able to concentrate on that center part of the blade pretty easy. Okay, so now that we've got this edge down to where we wanted it, at least it's got some sharpness to it now. Now we're going to go to a little bit finer grit stone here. Something that's not going to remove as much material. The finer the grit, the less material you're going to remove. And the more polishing you're going to do. Now you're going to start to see a different shine on your blade as well. When you get to these finer grit stones, it's going to put more of a polish on your blade. So you're not going to see as much of a dull finish on your blade edge when you wipe it off to see where you're at. You're going to see more of a polished shine look. And when we strop it, that'll get even more enhanced. And it's definitely getting sharper by a long shot in that area that I was worried about. Again, I'm kind of staying away from this upper area too much because it was already pretty sharp. I just had one spot that I wanted to get, and I'm getting really close to that, and then I'm going to go straight to the strop because I don't want to remove material unnecessarily either. That's the problem, I think, with people wanting to sharpen knives all the time. Every time you put a knife on a stone, you're removing material. Even when you use a strop with a compound on it, you're going to remove some material. So as far as the longevity of your blade goes, the less it's on a stone, the better off you are. But sometimes you have to go to the stone if you've let the knife get too dull to begin with before you honed it or stropped it, or if you've damaged it, or if you started off with a knife that wasn't as sharp as you wanted it to be to begin with, like this one, which wasn't quite to my standard of sharpness in one area. So I chose to fix that right off the bat. And then it'll probably be a long time before this knife ever sees a stone again, which I'm glad of because I really don't like doing this. This is a time-consuming process. What you're seeing in the video is about 1/10 of the time it's taken me to do this and the amount of strokes I'm putting on it. Because I don't think you want to sit around watching paint dry for me to sharpen a knife. Okay, so once I've got this knife to the point where I'm ready to strop it, I'm going to take a double-sided strop, and one side of the strop, the coarser side, I'm going to rub down with tormek compound. And compound is a clay-based material that does remove material from the blade, but also helps to polish it. And a strop is very easy to use. Again, it's just like a stone. You index on the bevel, and you pull the blade towards you. You index on the bevel, and you push the blade away. Just like this. And again, you're going to start to shine your blade when you're doing this, but you're also going to refine that edge that you've just put on it and make it much, much sharper. This, again, is the easiest way to maintain your blade over time and keep it off the stones, is to use a strop like this, a hardboard strop, to realign your edge and get things trued up between uses instead of waiting to the point where it's so dull it has to go to a stone. And very much like a stone, you've got a coarse side and a fine side. So we're going to start with the coarse side, and then we'll go to the fine. Just like we were reducing our stone grit as we went. Okay, now we're getting to the point where we've really got a good shine on this blade. I don't know how well you can see that. Now we're starting to almost lose all of the grinder scratches for the most part in this blade. And that's a sign of a blade that's been, buffed really, really well. You've got a few grinder marks still right there, very faint. On this side, you got a few right here that are pretty faint. But for the most part, they're gone. And that tells you that that knife's been polished either on a high-speed buffer or it's been used on stones and a strop, and a lot of strokes on both. I'm probably already up to 100 on each side on the strop, and I haven't went to the smooth side yet or the softer side yet. I'm still on the side with the buffing compound on it, but I'm getting ready to change over because I'm convinced I got that area I was worried about sharp. So again, there's no sense removing more material if I don't need to. Okay, for the final strokes on this thing, I'm going to go to basically a dry-sided strop here, which is just leather, so it's not going to remove material. It's only going to polish the edge and put a final honing on this blade edge. And then again, it's no different. You're just registering on the bevel, pulling it towards you, registering on the bevel and pushing it away. No different than a stone. Lots of folks try to make this sharpening process out to be rocket science. And believe me, it's not. If it was, I couldn't do it. All right, so I'm going to spray this blade down with a little bit of ballistol. I like that about the best for lubricating everything from my firearms when I'm cleaning them here in the shed or the shop at home to my knives. I think it works really, really well. Now, I guess there's really only one thing left to do to put the proof in the pudding here, and that's to see if we got a shaving sharp blade in that area that we're trying to get sharp. Yeah, that's a lot of hair coming off there for sure. Oh yeah. He's definitely shaving sharp now. Alright guys, well that was just a really quick down and dirty video on sharpening and then honing your knife in the shop with water stones and a strop. Wasn't really meant to be too much of an instructional, although I did bring up a lot of good points in here for you to remember when you're sharpening your blades. But it was more of a demonstration of the techniques used and a talk through some of the different materials that I use here at home. Again, all of this stuff can be purchased straight off of Amazon if you don't have anywhere local that you can buy it. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. And I'll be back with another video as soon as I can, guys. Thanks.